All right, so welcome to our session today. And what we're going to take a look at is the new features that are available now that you've gone to MapleWood Enterprise. So one of the things you'll notice right off the bat when you start using your MapleWood is that it's not horribly different. It looks exactly the same on the outset as it did in the MapleWood you had previously. Some of the features, though, have been enhanced, and we've been doing all of our development in the MapleWood Enterprise version, which is one of the main reasons that Upper Grand switched over, was because they wanted to take advantage of these new features, as we're not putting any of those new features in the system you were using before, otherwise known as MapleWood Legacy. So the MapleWood options, everything is still the same menu options, nothing's moved, but there are some new features that you may not be familiar with, and that's why we're holding this training session today. So one of the first things you're going to notice is the expanded, enhanced student search. When you go in to bring up a student record now, the search screen looks much different than it did before. You used to only be able to search on student's surname and not on the other parts of the student's name. Well, you can still search on student's surname the very way that you did before. So if I want to see all the students whose last name starts with B, I simply just need to go B. But the difference now, that just takes a little getting used to, is you either have to hit enter after the B, or you can click the search button. That refreshes the list and brings up the records. As you can see as well now, we show many more parts of the student's information on this screen. So it used to be you just saw their name and their status. Now you can see their middle name, their usual name. The status is still showing. This homeschool, that would have been something you would have been familiar with before as well. That would just show whether you are the homeschool, or it'll say no concurrent if the students are enrolled in another school at Upper Grand. Then we have their grades showing, their homeroom, and if you just scroll a little bit to the right, you'll see that their OEN is also showing. I'm sure you've got a question right off the bat, because I happen to hover my mouse over one of these little students who have what we call an alternate name. So anyone who has an alternate name, that's that AKA column that's down beside the student status, this student does have an alternate name. All that means is that they go by another name or may have been registered under another name at another school. This isn't the name necessarily that's on their certificate, but it should be. It should always be the name that's on their certificate, but you use the alternate names to carry other names that are associated with that student. And I'll talk about that more when we look at the student record. So the reason those are showing is because I have lots of different options I can turn on and off with the search screen. If I don't want to see deleted students, that was one of the feedbacks we got from schools over the years, was that why do I have to see my deleted students in the list all the time? Well, if you don't want to see deleted students, and let me just see if I have one here. There's some deleted students. If I uncheck the deleted box, but remember you have to refresh the search, so I have to click search afterwards. If I don't have deleted check, those students no longer show up in my list. So now those students who had a status of deleted are not there. Or if you don't want to see the next year onlys, you can take that off as well. Now the aliases, which is that AKA column, which will only show, by the way, if you have students with aliases in your search. If there wasn't anybody who had an alias, then that column's totally not shown. And it's showing because up here at the top right, I have include alternate names, like name changes and aliases. If I take those off rather than on and I refresh my search, then that doesn't even show. Now what's neat about when I have aliases in the system, and I'm not sure if I have one here right now, but sometimes what happens is they may match on my B search because their alias has starts with a B, but maybe their name is actually Smith, but their alias is Brown Smith. Well, they would show up when I searched under B's because it matches on the alias. If you don't want it to do that, then again, uncheck the aliases and those won't show. So you can do a lot of additional things now within the filter. One other thing you can do is you can search on, instead of the surname, we could search on anybody whose other parts of their name start with a letter or match your string. So if I wanted to search on given name or usual name, one or the other, then I could do a search on B's, and again I have to always press enter or search, and now I'm getting all the students whose given name starts with B rather than surname starting with B. One of the other things you can do within here is you can also sort on any of these columns that are in the screen on the display. If I wanted to look at all my students with given name B, but I want them sorted by their grade or homeroom or OEN instead of their surname after the B, then I simply click on the grade descriptor at the top, and now they're all sorted. So I've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11s, and 12s in this school. So it all depends on how you want to see the information. If you want to go back to surname, and now you can see it's still sorted on by grade within that. So lots of functionality and flexibility. The other thing I really like about it is it shows you down at the lower left how many students match your search criteria. So if you wanted to see, for instance, and here's a little trick, just your, let's say you were in the spring of next year and you want to see who are all my next year only students. Yes, you could go out and do an inquiry on that or something. You could also do it right here on the search screen. Show me all next year only students. And with Enterprise, instead of using an asterisk as a wildcard, you can use the % sign. And I want to say, so show me any surname and just next year only. Now I would get all those students who are my next year only students, and I have 7. So it's really very handy in doing quick analysis of just student records and how many students of this or that might I have. So some of the things you can do with it. Now I'm going to just go back and search on just my A students again. Oh, I don't want next year only. They'll see I caught myself. You have to watch what you've got checked there. So here I'm going to go into my first student here. And it's going to bring up their record. And the record looks pretty much the same as we've seen so far. A couple of new things that are on the record to point out is we have added some new tabs. So you might see that there's some additional tabs, and we'll talk about those momentarily and what new tab you'll see on your MapleWood. Some of the things over on the left that are different, the basic biographics and everything is the same, but if you happen to be a school that receives students from one of the other schools, so you have feeder students that come up to you from your school, then you will see the other schools button for sure. If you are an elementary school and you don't have a lot of students who happen to come to you from other schools, they've been in your school since the beginning, you may not see the other schools button. What that other schools button does for you over on the left-hand side, if I click on it, it shows me where else the student has been in upper grade. So if they've never been in any other school but yours, then you won't see another schools button. But as soon as, let's say, an elementary student goes to a secondary school, the secondary school will see where they were prior to coming to their school. So this would be the school that they last attended. So here I can even go in and I can see the student's record at that school. So over at Westside Public School, this student is now in past. And this is when they started, the retirement date when they left, and whether it's the home school. Well, in this case, that's not their home school because they're in past over there. And as you can see from this record, the home school is yes at the secondary, so that's the active school. If you want to see what's on file over there, you can see some basic information just by double-clicking on it, and it's like opening up the record that's in past at that school. Now, as you can see, you can't do anything. There's no edit capability or anything like that. But you could even see if this was a secondary to secondary, and we're going to talk about the history. You could see information over at that school. Now, the idea with the MapleWood Enterprise as well is what has happened, what has taken place over the last several months. that the central office people have been working very hard at is to synchronize and clean up all of the MapleWood records and eliminate the duplicate students that were at individual schools. Because you used to be separate little islands of MapleWood. So you were all little, each school was a little island of MapleWood. And when you go to MapleWood Enterprise, instead of all being separate islands, you are instead one big mega city. You could look at it, I guess, as an analogy. And every student record is in the big database. So it's now no longer separate islands. It's one student record in the whole division. So the division is one database now. And you just move the student wherever the student needs to be enrolled. So it's a much easier process when it comes time to retire students from elementary and enroll them into secondary. You don't have to make the file anymore, and we can take a look at that a little bit later on as we go. But the idea is that it's one student record across the division. So here we're just taking a peek at, even though they have a record on file over at that school, your record and their record is essentially the same record. So it's one student, this Rufero, Jessica, who, if she was to enroll at another school, would only one of you can own the student and claim the student, and that's where the whole homeschool thing comes into, and we'll get into that as we go along. But the main thing to keep in mind is that it's one student record in the whole system now. So with that being said, if your student has transferred, you'll have an Other Schools button. If your student has always just been at your school, nowhere else in the division, you won't have an Other Schools button. So here on the Biographics tab, not a whole lot that's new or different that you can do on the Biographics. There is one exciting new feature, though, that a lot of schools that I go out and do training really like, and that has to do with the flags. The flags now, it used to be you could only set one flag per student. Well, now you can set several flags on a student. So if I want to set the flag, again, you go up to the flag there. My student already has a flag, but if I want to change it up at the top right, then I just click on it. I can see all the flags that have been set up in my school, and this is just training data, so bear with me. Some of the things get a little, well, silly, for instance. So if my student had an EpiPen and they were on a roll, if I hold down the control key, I can select both EpiPen and Honor Roll. You couldn't do that before with the MapleWood you had prior to going Enterprise. So now you just multi-click on the ones you want, holding down the control key. So EpiPen, holding down the control key, Honor Roll, and I say OK. Now one of the things it does, you'll notice, is it makes it a rainbow colored flag. And the reason being is because one was green and one was blue or whatever. So it doesn't know what color to make the flag, so it makes it multicolored. And if you want to know what that student has, if you just hover your mouse over the flag, a little pop-up will come up to show you Honor Roll, EpiPen. It also shows as well in the status line down at the lower left underneath the Step to Another Student. You'll see down there it shows Honor Roll and EpiPen as well. And if you forget, then you can just click on the flag, and these are shadowed in to show you what ones are selected. So that's how you can multi-select. You just hold down the control key and choose as many as you want. All right, the other thing on the Biographics tab that has been enhanced is the name button. So a moment ago when we were looking at the student searching, we were seeing how the name, we could have aliases on students. So that's where you enter those aliases, is in the name. So here we can see that this student does have an alias, and it is the, again, just to reinforce, the surname, given name, middle name, all that on the student record should match what the student's ID shows, their identification or what you're using as proof of identity. So that should match with the legal. But if you want to say they also may